god, it's the PC. I need to get to PC. It's so fucking long. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Today is a scary stream. Um, yeah. Delivering. Ooh, okay. Okay. The theme today, there really isn't one today. Today's just more or less, literally horror, terror, creepy, scary. That's all I'm basing it off of. Maybe a bit of dread, right? So today's like more like it's gonna have emphasis on why let's overview them. So this is the Battle of Ape Canyon, which is just one I wanted to hear. This is playing in the forest. This is 27 minutes of Nightmares Real Life Stories. I'll skip the ones I need to skip. In case like they get really bad. At one point, I'm pretty sure I fucking saw a not a body, but like some weird shit on here. You know what I mean? Top fives. Three scary summertime stories, right? Because summer is almost over. It's about to be fall. Then we're gonna move on to 10 cursed haunted paintings. Hopefully, they give their background and why they're cursed and stuff like that. Five scary videos that are actually scary. These are just like everything else that I have. Just whatever, right? This is just the normal fucking regular vids I would react to, minus this one. This is actually like a different type of video. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I am on just chatting. Great. Okay. So I don't remember if I just start right away because it's been over a month. Because I think the last one I did was like July 9th, 8th, 7th, somewhere on there. I can confirm right now. We'll get started in a moment. Just looking through my over here is where I have my Twitch stuff, which you guys can't see. That's how you see my mouse go up and down. Uh, yeah, Cryptids was July 6th. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Because like usually how it goes is like every so often I get into like the trend of like, oh, let me just start at like the beginning of the month do a scary stream, right? But sometimes it's just better to pace them out at like different orders. So like, let's say like last month I did it early, right? This month I just wanted to do it like later on. Maybe like in the middle, not too late into the month, because otherwise then I'm gonna be like, oh, let me do another scary stream on fucking September, like I don't know, 10th or something. But yeah, that's not the date I have. I feel like the no, not even before like the 18th. It's like who knows how busy I'm gonna be then. But what was I gonna say? Yeah. One last thing I wanted to say is that streams are going to fucking become shorter and shorter. Um, by shorter I mean like actually no, they're not gonna become shorter. Maybe like certain days, starting this next week. Um, but they're gonna become sparser. Is that a word? Is that a word? Sparse. Yeah, I just like to spur random days that I decide. It's like maybe like twice a day. No, yeah, twice a week. I like streaming 3 times a week. There's no way I can stream every day because of school and stuff. So yeah, there's that. So with all that said, let's get started. I do tend to talk a bit, though with information that I know, or like with stuff I want to mention. But today it feels like I'm probably not gonna be able to like relate to much of the information
Carved into the
or
southeast
talk
shoulder of
about a lot
Mount
of
St.
this
Helens is a
like
deep
related
and
to other
narrow
stuff.
gorge, the name of which is derived from a shocking encounter which was reported to have
Did I
taken
watch this
place
one?
there in
Yeah,
July
we
of
saw this much.
1924. A true struggle between man and beast, which would end up becoming known as the Battle of Ape
Yeah,
Canyon.
so this is like a Bigfoot story, but Bigfoot 2 or what was it? No, July 1924. Yeah, it's like way before that. So I'd say like what time period would that be? The Roaring Twenties were gone, right? Oh no, that was the Roaring Twenties, right? Oh, where is mom? Hold up, let me search that up on my other stuff. Oh, by the way. Yeah, until 1929, it crashed the Great Depression. Let me see something. Hold up. This is what I mean by like it. How was I gonna search up? Oh yeah. It's like by Australia. No, it's Washington State. Okay. Yeah, this is the Roaring Twenties. So who knows what we see here? Yes, did I say Australia? I mean, Sam. Dude, I'm gonna confuse everything. So, that way the little thing doesn't like sometimes it doesn't catch like the right area. Also, I got the new chair, but I'm gonna explain that at the end of the stream.
The writings of the Native American tribes which originate from the northwestern states, such as the Klallam and Cowlitz,
Oh wait.
contain references to a strange and secretive race. This largely undocumented tribe was referred to by its neighbours as the Siatic, whose people possess bizarre and supernatural abilities, and were so alien and unusual in appearance that all the other indigenous societies would
There's
go
like something from a video game where like Shiantic? That's not a Oh, Shinotic. There we go. That name just reminds me of Shinotic. I don't know if they're
their
like
way to avoid
related.
risking any
I don't think they
contact
are.
with them. Siatic warriors were said to stand between 7 and 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in
Yeah,
an
that's a lot.
unnaturally thick layer of hair, giving them the appearance of possessing a form of animal hide. It
So
was
they're
said
just
that these
Bigfoot.
ungodly beings
It's a
had
tribe
the
of
ability to
Bigfoots.
hypnotize those they
wow.
encountered, placing charms and spells upon both human beings and animals
Like,
alike.
what was I gonna say? There's more
Some
cultural
stories
stuff,
even
right?
suggested that the Siatic were capable of killing merely by willing the idea of death into the mind of their victim.
That's interesting.
Most testimony pertaining to this secretive
Like,
race agreed that they were largely a nocturnal species,
like with this
electing to
stuff
dwell
with,
deep inside the
witches and
sheltered
how they
mountain
wish bad
caves
on
and
people,
fishes
it
during the
happens.
hours of daylight, only venturing out into the wilderness to hunt and forage after dark. They would steal into the encampments and villages of those who had settled the region, taking whatever dried meat and fish they could lay their hands on, and in some cases abducting any unfortunate womenfolk they encountered. A summary of the various fantastic powers and abilities attributed to the Siatic makes for somewhat lengthy reading.
Yeah.
In
Probably like
addition
way
to
more-
being able to communicate with one
And
another
things that
telepathically,
people
these
know
monstrous
about
entities
this,
could also throw their
yeah,
voices,
entity,
imitating any animal
like
found
there's
in the
people in different
forest.
communities that probably are like, oh no, we
They
has-
possessed
or
a
it doesn't have
superhuman
this power,
sense of
right?
smell, making them
Like,
superb trackers,
Come up with like
and their ability to camouflage
well, they all have like
themselves
differences
within
in what
their
they
natural environment
understand. Or
made them formidable opponents. Over time, many of the tribes native to the
Yeah.
Washington and Oregon areas grew to believe that the reclusive Siatic had finally become extinct. Encounters with and sightings of the giant humanoids dried up completely, but on occasion, a hunting party would sometimes happen across sets of gigantic footprints, crisscrossing the borders of their territory. With the
That's why I say
dawn of
it's
the
Bigfoot.
20th century bringing far more tangible threats for the native tribes to contend with, the legend of the Siatic eventually died away. But as settlers continued to push deeper and deeper into the traditional hunting grounds of the indigenous tribes of North America, they would sometimes find that the legends of the people they were encroaching upon had a worrying tendency to push back.
You know, this is what reminds me of, like Latin America and like all the legends of like you know, like temples, Incan temples of the Mayans and stuff like that. And then like the people just being like, like they're probably not true, and then people just stumbling upon like a fucking Mayan temple or something, like randomly. Look, wait, no. Okay, because like I was thinking back to like seventh grade. It's like the history teacher I had for world history in seventh grade. It was just like a seventh grade intro to world history, right? I think that's normal or something. Really like normal, not even normal, just like very close. But what was I gonna say? I love this teacher because he was so fucking amazing. He talked about how one of his, not one of his students, because I thought it was. I'm pretty sure I'm misremembering. Point is, like he said that a student or something in university or maybe not high school, but the point is they discovered like Mayan, yeah, satellite. Uh, discovered it. No. Discovered it. Oh yeah, a Canadian teenager may have. Oh yeah. Yeah, William Guttery. There we go. A Canadian teenager. Yeah, that guy. Fucking discovered a Mayan temple at the age of 15. Yeah, so he was like in high school or like in middle school, and I was like crazy. But the point is, I know like in Latin America, there's like always legends of like like El Dorado and stuff like that, right? Yeah, right. Which is like a whole area that's like a whole like city made out of gold and stuff like that, right? And I think I read an article like maybe honestly like earlier this not the year I think it was like 2 3 months ago, where they detailed how like um you know basically the conquistadores would go across Latin America spreading their disease because they didn't know how to like prevent it, right? And it would kill off the Native American, yeah, basically the natives there, right? And how basically cities would just be like uncapped and basically buried under the ground, and that was crazy. So like stuff like legends that like Native Americans say usually have some truth to
The
it. They're not
town
like
of
all
Kelso
like
in Washington state
fake
had
or
always possessed something of a
some sort
notorious
of way to like
reputation,
add a mysticism.
serving as a hub for the numerous
That's why they're
communities of
culturally
miners
relevant.
and loggers
Most of the
who plied their trade in the
it's
surrounding area.
Middle East.
Its overabundance of brothels and other licensed premises would eventually earn the isolated rural settlement the unenviable nickname of Little Chicago. It was in the early hours of Saturday the 12th of July 1924 that a bedraggled band of gold prospectors stumbled into one of
Yeah, okay, of
Kelso's
course.
numerous taverns, describing to other patrons how they had just barely survived an encounter with a race of what they referred to as mountain devils. As the morning progressed,
Pretty
the
sure they were
small
just
crowd
like
of onlookers which had
making that
assembled to
up
listen
just
to
so
the
like
group's story steadily grew in size,
yeah,
eventually
just for, like,
attracting the
popularity.
attention of a pair of state park employees, J.H. Huffman and Bill Welsh. The two park rangers listened with interest as the 5 dirty and dishevelled newcomers paused between drinks to relate their fantastic and
Yeah.
terrifying tale. They noted how both the band's leader, Marion Smith, and his son Roy were the most subdued of the bunch. Of the remainder, Gabe Lefevre and John Peterson were slightly more outgoing, but it was the one named Fred Beck who was doing most of the talking.
Yeah.
Beck explained at length, pausing for occasional clarification and support from his colleagues, how the group had spent the last couple of weeks scouring the local foothills for potential seams of gold. Operating from a cabin they had recently thrown up a short distance from the Lewis River, the men had initially been quite productive, until they had suddenly been overcome by an overpowering feeling that they were being surveilled by an unseen force.
Well, that sounds interesting.
As the treasure
'Cause
hunters...
they operated a cabin. Keep that in mind. Maybe they're saying these fantastical tales to make people come and like tour, you know?
gone about
that
their
could be an idea.
business, they had begun to notice signs that they were not alone.
But maybe there's
Mysterious
some
tracks were
legiticism.
found on the muddy
Is that
ground
called
near the
legiticism?
cabin,
Is that even-
some of which were up to
like,
14 inches
legit
in length
claims, right?
and possessed 4 stubby toes.
Uh-huh.
The men also began to catch glimpses of a large animal moving in the depths of the forest, which they estimated to be near 7 feet tall and
Legitimism, there we
walking in
go.
an oddly bipedal and humanoid manner. On the afternoon of Friday the 11th, the prospectors had eaten a late lunch before heading up into the hills to pan for gold until the onset of darkness. They had only travelled a short distance, however, before their journey had taken a completely unanticipated and bewildering turn. As they had been moving along the base of the mountain, they came face to face with a group of grotesque entities who had suddenly emerged from the shelter of a ravine which lay directly across their
Very
path.
interesting.
There were 4 of the creatures in total, which
Uh-huh.
Fred Beck would describe as resembling huge gorillas, covered from head to toe in thick matted black fur, and estimating that they must have weighed around 400 pounds each.
Huh.
Time seemed to stand still as
Well, I
the
mean,
2 groups paused to
Can't make much of
regard
this
one
without
another.
like.
An eerie and
those were
smothering
descriptions somewhere,
silence
right?
descended upon the scene, neither
I don't know what
side
animal
moving
they
a
could be
muscle,
seeing. Maybe like
before one
sloths,
of the
giant
giants suddenly
sloths.
took
I
a
don't
heavy
know.
stride
doubt it.
forwards and bellowed a guttural and inhuman roar in the direction of the 5 men.
Here's the thing.
Beck
Giant
related
sloths.
how his companions had fallen backwards over them.
Make sure. $1,000 years ago, right? What was I gonna say? Like rumors that like certain like 6 species can just like not spring up out of nowhere, right? Because that's impossible biologically wise. But can kind of like what you would call it? Kind of like hide out with like little like settlements dispersed across their places where they used to roam, right? But like really hidden because like there's like a thought to be extinct for 100 years. When was this? Yeah, 9th of June 2022. A single female of the Fernanda Island tortoise species that was thought to be extinct since she's been found in the Galapagos. Obviously, this is just like a single female, right? But what I'm saying is like populations like that could totally exist. Especially up to like giant beings, I guess, because they'd probably live in groups or like little herds, right? Wouldn't necessarily be like
Themselves in sheer terror, and
No,
with the
bigger
monster's
sizes?
savage
because like with the big size and like my opinion, you know, you're not an easy target for like, you know, I guess like predators, but like you need like a herd or like a group to really help you sustain and nourish yourself, right? Because like if you were that big and just hunting on your own, you'd probably die way more easily than compared to like a group of entities
cry
here, right?
echoing
Going out and hunting for food and dispersing it amongst each other.
and reverberating off the
my
rocky
point makes
outcrops
sense.
surrounding them. He had
Funny,
instinctively
scary
raised
shit.
his rifle
No,
and
it's
fired
not.
shot after
It's
shot
scary
at the
shit.
attacker. Eventually, The fourth successful hit that he
God.
scored
Huh?
knocked the advancing beast off its feet and sent it
Dang.
tumbling sideways down into the ravine it had emerged from.
Yeah,
At this,
that sucks.
the remaining trio of creatures also began to roar and
Like,
scream,
they're off
and the
they're
5
off, and I'm
prospectors
ready for
fled the
this.
scene,
Nice.
only pausing
Welcome
some
back,
distance
Anna.
later when the inhuman howling and bellowing finally
How's your day, I
ceased.
guess.
But the exhausted adventurers barely had time to catch their
It's like,
breath
I was like between a
before
burp
they were
and my
again
stomach
running for
rumbling.
their lives. As numerous shadowy figures
us
began
out.
to slowly emerge from the caves and fissures they had already passed.
Oh,
Having finally
Go grab
returned to
water,
the
okay.
safety of their staging post, the men desperately set about reinforcing the cabin's door and windows, while simultaneously arming themselves with whatever tools or
yeah,
implements they could
went
find.
to hide, huh? No, yeah.
Mere
that'd be
moments after the
freaky as
last piece of
fuck.
wood had been nailed into
If I,
place.
this is why
the
you
whole
don't shoot
structure-
like beings like this, dude. Like what the fuck? Like yeah, I'm gonna shoot Bigfoot and I'm totally gonna win, right? Obviously, I'm using Bigfoot here, a little bit ironically, and a little bit insensitively. But like, what was I gonna say? Like you wouldn't shoot some mythical creature that like is way more stronger than you with a fucking gun, right? That'll just agitate the group that they're with, or just agitate them themselves, right?
was suddenly shaken and rattled
So,
by a
yeah.
series of forceful
This is
external impacts.
Totally.
The heavy blows
This-
which repeatedly
this,
rained
like,
down from
gonna happen
outside
if
were
we do that.
accompanied by the now familiar howls of the creatures they had run from, now seeming to
Ah.
emanate from all around the building.
Like howls, like
It was
Like,
not long before the
"Oh,"
first
like that.
makeshift barricade buckled under this relentless assault, with one of the creatures attempting to haul itself inside
fuck.
through a gap it had
That reminds me
created.
of Call of Duty Zombies when they start breaking
In
through the windows.
desperation, Roy Smith attempted to fend off the intruder with an axe, but found himself violently swatted to one side. Eventually, it was driven off with a pistol used by Roy's father, and the breach was successfully resecured.
Nice.
The
Ow.
group's attackers then
Just
seemed to change tact,
did that.
and all the men could do was watch helplessly as a wide hole was
Yikes.
smashed into the ceiling above them, before large rocks and boulders were being hurled into the cabin's interior.
You know, there's like a little bit of a
What-
similarity between like, okay, because like werewolves are said to like just like break into houses and try to like do whatever the fuck they want to do to their victims, right? But like this has a striking it just resembles like werewolves and what they do.
One of these projectiles struck Fred Beck on the
Obviously,
back of his
the
head,
concept
rendering
the-
him
both of the
unconscious
beings
for a
are
2-hour
different.
period. When he
Yeah, big
awoke,
rocks.
the assault was still going on,
Uh-huh.
his companions crouching silently beside him, firing gunshots up through the hole in the roof whenever they detected movement. Finally, at the break of dawn, the incessant roaring and hammering coming from outside the building subsided. After what they considered to have been a suitable period of inactivity, the miners peeked outside to confirm that none of the mountain devils were lying in wait,
Mountain Devil.
before grabbing their personal possessions
Yeah, that's
and
like
running
a
as
weird
fast as they
name.
could in the direction of Kelso. When their
What were they
story
gonna
had
say?
been told, it took little more than the offer of a few drinks for Huffman and Welsh
I
to
feel like
persuade
this is
Beck
just like
to
a
lead them back up the
like an
mountain
event where
to
like,
where
oh
he
fuck, I'm gonna
claimed
break the cabin
incident
and make
had
up a
taken
story to
place.
bring tourists to the cabin. and
After
just
several
survive.
hours clambering over
Or
the
like maybe
ravine
to
in
like ward
question,
off like miners.
the two
as well.
rangers could find no trace of
Yeah,
the monsters
exactly.
he had described, save for a few spent shell casings. But when Beck subsequently showed them what remained of the cabin, it was a very different story. The roof of the small shack was completely smashed in. The furniture inside was shattered and broken, and the room was littered with sizable rocks and boulders.
This is okay. I remember the campfire fire, which is like really scary here in California, right? I remember when that shit happened, some celebrities just burnt down their houses and legitimately blamed it on the campfire fire, even though it was like miles away from them, like millions of miles away. That was like crazy. Hold up. Celebrity, this is you all. swear there was, or like if it was like a conspiracy theory, I'm gonna be so fucking mad. Yeah. No, but like there's like I guess like rumors or something dumb like that, right? I wouldn't put it past it being like fake or be just spreading misinformation. That'd be fun. Hold up, I just saw something.
The two
No,
men
but yeah.
paused to take impressions and
This is
measurements
just them probably like ruining their cabin just to like
of
maybe
numerous
get something
mysterious
out of it.
footprints which
Right?
surrounded the wrecked structure, before they all hurried back down the mountain the way they had come, with the sun slowly starting to descend behind them. The story was quickly picked up by both local and national
Yeah.
media outlets, which dubbed the incident the Battle of Ape Canyon, and visitors from far and wide were soon
There
flocking
we
to the
go.
area
See,
in the hopes of having an encounter of their own with the elusive mountain devils.
and business, just grew.
There would be no further sightings of the creatures described by Fred Beck and his colleagues, but the tale they had told would remain firmly lodged in the public consciousness for many years to come.
Exactly.
In the 1950s, an article in the Seattle Times claimed to have uncovered the truth behind the mysterious happening once and for all, when former members of the YMCA troop at nearby Camp Meehan claimed that they and the rest of their friends were the ones who had attacked the prospector's cabin.
Oh, okay, interesting.
They stated that they had thrown rocks down onto the cabin roof from high above the neighbouring hillside, and that the drunken gold miners had mistaken their echoing whoops and catcalls for the roaring of angry Sasquatches.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible.
Despite this development, Fred Beck never wavered from his belief.
Okay, this
that
is
his
not the truth I
attackers had
thought I
been
was gonna
something
uncover.
truly inhuman. Even
truth
when
is
some of his
just- I was gonna
detractors
hear
were
right
able to
now.
replicate the tracks
It's
he had shown
funny.
to the park rangers
sad.
simply by manipulating the knuckles and palm of their hands, he refused to accept that he and his fellow fortune seekers were the victims of an elaborate hoax. As time passed, Beck's views began to markedly differ from the others in his group. Whilst Marion and Roy Smith maintained that the creatures which had attacked them were savage beasts, whose cave must have been located close to their cabin, Beck believed they were in fact highly intelligent interdimensional beings.
What?
He would go on to publish articles and pamphlets linking Sasquatch sightings in the United States to those of Yetis in the Far East, claiming these were coordinated global incursions by beings from a parallel universe.
What does that even mean?
Although Bigfoot sightings have historically occurred all over
Yeah.
North America, the Pacific Northwest appears to be a focal point for the phenomena, accounting for well over a third of these alleged encounters. And whilst most descriptions of these enormous cryptids are remarkably similar, opinions on where they came from are more varied.
There's some that say that they literally
Nearly
come
every
from
indigenous
UFOs and
tribe in
stuff,
the region
which is
tells
weird.
stories of cannibalistic wild men who elected to dwell away from the rest of humanity, high up in the peaks of the mountains. The natives
The thing
believe
is,
that over time,
That story of like how they hid themselves in the mountain could be very well true, but the fact, well, not fact, but more or less the idea that they maybe died off, but the natives down there that know that this certain group went up there to live there and cannibalism, right, and indulge in that, right, may believe still that they're alive.
these
even though they're
people
not.
somehow
Because
evolved
think
into the
about it, like,
animal-like entities
I
their
don't think it'd be
ancestors would
super easy to live in
occasionally
like
encounter,
mountains or mountains,
now more
like,
monstrous in
areas.
appearance than human.
Especially because like
The existence of
what's
claw
this-
marks
especially like Oregon. Yes. 10 to 15 deaths per mile, yeah. Well, I mean, this is going from like, going from east to the west, right? But the point is that like the mountains are like very horrible.
and
Easy
some of
to
the
like
footprints associated with Sasquatch
die around.
encounters lead some scientists to suggest that these
Yeah, 10 to
creatures are
15
more
per
likely
mile.
a surviving hominid
Let's see that statistic again, because it could be like, NPS. Oh fuck, this is the government website. Yeah, the government, National Park Service. Yeah, this is an actual statistic. Yeah. This is an average of 10 to 15 deaths per mile. Yeah. So think about that. And that yeah, that's bad. Yeah. So see, that's what I'm saying. It's like imagine natives now going up to a mountain. I'm not saying that like they didn't have the tools or anything like that, but sure would be one hell of a feat to accomplish, because most civilizations like to like you know actually like stay near like flat areas near water sources, not necessarily mountains, right? So because like for civilization to like live in mountains, they had to have a really good like trade or economy or something like that, right?
Hominid,
Yeah,
previously
yeah.
thought
Like,
extinct.
fuck, I'm speaking all sorts of bad
There are
today. All
similarities in
sorts
the
of
samples
wrong.
recovered from fossils found in the deserts of
Yeah.
Africa, and it is theorized that the species may have crossed a land bridge as Pangaea separated, stubbornly
Face
enduring
moving.
in more
But
remote
yeah.
parts of the new North American continent.
No, like seriously, it's hard. It's hard to
The
like
alleged Battle of
just
Ape
live in
Canyon
mountains
is intriguingly
general.
not the only mystery associated
It
with the
affects so many
area.
people, like blood
In August
wise, like with the
1963,
pressure, right?
a group of 4 mountaineers descending the
heart
same
needs to work
face of
more.
Mount St. Helens had stopped to take a rest at a geological feature known as Dog's Head. One of their number, Jim Carter, agreed to stop behind and take a picture of the rest of.
Wait, what was the president? Carter? No way! No, they're not gonna talk about Jimmy Carter.
The group as they headed off
What the
again
fuck?
into the distance. After a while, the other 3 members of the
Are you
group
gonna say
became
he saw
concerned
fucking
that Carter
Bigfoot?
had not yet caught up with them.
Everybody
When they
thinks he's just
eventually
a
made their
different
way
person.
back up to where they had left their absent friend, there were clear
Like,
signs in
now
the
I
snow
feel like
that
I'm
some
talking with
kind
the
of
list. I don't
scuffle
know
had
why.
taken place, along with a discarded box of camera film.
Okay.
The skiers then followed what appeared to be Carter's trail,
This is
which
the
led
same
off
video,
in an
right?
apparently random and uncoordinated route
39th
in a
president,
completely different
Jimmy Carter,
direction to the one
Bigfoot
they had
encounter?
followed down the mountain.
Yeah, that's a like. His
The
name's
tracks
Jim,
indicated
not
that
Jimmy.
Carter had clearly been moving at some speed,
The guy in the story, right?
executing jumps and turns which carried huge amounts of risk.
Wait,
Eventually, the marks
wait,
left by his
is this where? Oh no, it's Al Gore. Okay, okay. Never mind.
skis stopped
Never mind.
next to a steep
Hopefully nothing
drop,
crazy came up there.
and so the party reluctantly headed down into Kelso to seek help from the authorities.
Oh, because there's that joke from Al Gore.
Despite
I don't know
2
where that's
weeks
from.
of combing the canyon floor
Like,
in
I
the
know it's
vicinity
from
of the
South Park.
missing
Like,
skiers'
I don't know where like
tracks,
South Park got it.
much like the monster shot by Fred Beck there 40 years earlier, no remains were ever found. Whatever species attacked Fred Beck and his friends during
But
the
there are
1920s
species that legitimately grab their dad and do burials for them. Like animals, there's certain animals like elephants. They bury their dead and pay tribute to their bodies, and to the bones. Yeah, it's very sad.
and chased Jim Carter to his death nearly half a century later,
So,
has
there's
managed to
species
elude
out there.
all
They
attempts
don't
to
necessarily have
locate
to
or
look like
identify
us,
it
right?
ever
Like,
since.
elephants like ravens.
As we have already seen in previous episodes,
like an animal
the
disappearing like
vast
that
and
isn't
diverse
that weird.
nature
Like
of
for
the
example, like a
geography of the
bird.
United States
That's a little more
continues
right?
to produce
It has
mysteries
to
and
be a parrot
unexplained
for
incidents,
a parrot to-
which no amount of science and technology has yet managed to solve.
Like, I don't think like regular birds they grieve their dead.
Whether the giant hulking creatures referred to in these reports are the cursed ancestors of America's original inhabitants, or a some elusive offshoot of mankind's evolutionary journey, is unclear. Regardless, it remains apparent that they are not to be trifled with.
And to be misinterpreted or like shunned out. Because these claims, they have some truth to it always. Anyhow, that's the first story. So here's the second.
This week on
Oh, fuck,
Bedtime
I forgot.
Stories, we will be
Here we
returning
go.
to Soviet-era Russia
So I
in
don't know
order
what
to
this
delve
is
deeper
about.
into a story
Uh,
originally referenced during
I was like on the fence about this because it just sounds like a military one. It doesn't really sound like a scary one, right? And then like I read how considerate of the aliens to gently lower the aircraft.
a previous
So I'm like, oh
episode.
shit, okay.
That of a Cold War incident,
He's
which
always,
allegedly resulted in the
the
loss of a number
Soviet
of Soviet
Union,
soldiers. A
America,
mystery known in smaller
and the
circles
Cold
simply
War
as
led to
the plane in the
an
forest.
increase in sightings of aliens and stuff because both sides, you know, they were very not pathetic. What's the word? They just man, I'm forgetting my words today. They didn't get along, right? That's why it's called the Cold War. They were fighting proxy wars and stuff. So like Americans obviously like um they were scared of the Soviet Union and what they could do, and likewise the Soviet Union was afraid of America and what they could do, right? So this is why there's like UFO sightings because they're just easy to explain as how to do something bad. I'll be back.
As the transport laboured its way through the cloudy skies, the young
Yeah, there's all
lieutenant
this
surveyed
stuff.
the features of the men seated around him in the cramped cabin of the aircraft.
I was gonna say
For
yeah.
all their training and varied experience from previous missions, here and there he could still detect faint traces of apprehension.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances surrounding the orders they had been given that morning by the base
Chips,
commander,
but I'm wearing a white shirt.
this was perhaps unsurprising. Several days prior, a reconnaissance flight passing the Putarana Plateau had reported sighting a lone plane, sitting on the ground in the middle of a wooded area.
So like in Spanish, puta means like whore, and then rana means like frog, right? So like, but the fact that it's called puto rana, it's male whore, and then male whore frog is basically the fucking name. And plateau is just a
Yeah.
plateau. Funny, but I'm
Upon
pretty
their
sure this is
return
like
to
in Russia or
base,
something, right?
the flight's pilots had duly filed their report, which in due course had been matched to an internal bulletin relating to a missing military aircraft. The lieutenant and his team had been ordered to conduct a search of the area, which was situated not far from the slopes
Bill Nye, the BTT guy.
of Mount Carmel.
Welcome.
The paratroopers knew that the vast distance which lay between the crash site and their airbase represented the extreme
Welcome, man. How was
operating
your
range
day?
of the helicopter
Watch the scary
transporting them.
videos today.
There was little room for error within the mission parameters they had been given. If anything was to go wrong, they could well end up as isolated
Yeah,
as the
but,
very
like,
target they had been
I'm
ordered
not
to
really a
investigate.
Cheeto guy. I like Ducky's
And if he was honest, their commanding officer was equally as troubled by the same questions which preyed on the minds of each member of the patrol. What was a military plane doing out in the middle of nowhere,
What?
far beyond the distance it should have been able to fly,
Ducky's now, yeah.
having made an apparently impossible landing in the
Duckies are
middle of
love,
a heavily
duckies are
wooded
life.
forest?
Don't ask me what
And
I do with
perhaps
duckies.
more importantly, what fate had befallen the men who had been inside it?
I can buy you some? No, you can't. See, this is why I was like, fuck. See, because like that, because I don't know what to add to this. Because like, I was like, not even yeah. Hold on. People will be returning to Soviet era Russia. Yeah, yeah. This is like the Russians, right? Like, they're in puta. I keep on saying puta rana, but it's puto rana, right?
Men
Puto
who
rana.
had been inside
Putarana?
it.
I can't say that. I actually can't say that word in English. Putarana? Is that how you say it in English? Because I say puto rana. Puto rana. It just, my mind just offsets that. But like the BTT guy, you don't need to do anything to buy me anything. I don't know, man. Yeah. How would you say it in like Russian though?
Putarana. Putarana.
Sí, dice puta rana. No manches.
Putarana. Putarana.
They don't say puto rana. They say puta rana. And then in English,
Pitorana.
putarana. Putarana.
Pitorana.
Putarana.
In past episodes,
But can you turn
we
up
have
your
examined
mic just
various
a bit?
incidents
No,
in which
not
ships and
necessarily.
aircraft have vanished
It's already the
altogether
best it
in
can
remote
be.
areas
It's
such
literally
as the
0
Bermuda
decibels.
Triangle and the Great Lakes. These have included the
Putardana?
unsolved
I say
disappearances of Flight 19, as well as the loss of the French minesweepers Inkerman and Seri Soles. In other installments, we have also explored instances in
Yeah,
which
okay,
planes and
like
vessels
backtracking
have been discovered with their entire
Yeah.
crews slain under somewhat
Okay, you say cruise slate, but many of the times in these, but I know, right? With an accent. Putordana? Putordana doesn't sound like putarana. Or putorana, or whatever it was. Like? I'm gonna give a French accent. Putordana.
inexplicable.
How does this sound in French? French. I can't spell anymore. But you can just go.
Putorana. Putorana. Putorana.
Putorana. Putorana. Putorana. That's how they say it. I can't do French R's. I don't know. Putorana. Nice. Fuck, ever go to Squid Game? Oh, yeah, it's a squid. Always do that, yeah. Oh, I like it. I like that. It's a nice
Circumstances.
emote.
The most famous example of this would be the
Oh, yeah, yeah.
discovery
So I was gonna say with like flights falling down, they're either for political reasons, legitimately like they're accidents and it's just like the weather conditions, or there's something happening with the airplane where like the crew and some not I want to say terrorists, right? But like some other third party is just like hurting the pilots and stuff, right? And then they crash.
of the Orang Medan, a ship found floating in the middle of
Yeah.
the Indian Ocean.
So with like always like whenever like things crash land or boats kind of like blow up in the sea or just I don't know sink in the sea, currents drag them like miles and miles and miles away. Um. I cannot spell. What the fuck? Sunken ships. From our perspective, stationary object that's just unmoving. In reality, they're whipping around at a speed of 1,000 miles away. I don't know what that is in reference. Oh, okay. They're just explaining how I guess like perspective plays into effect into like the Earth's water or currents and stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, that's a fast speed to move at. So like whenever like a ship sinks, like stuff like that. Feels like all things are going on. Why'd you say that? I feel like with all things going on, there's gonna be another. Why are you saying that? I feel like if you're it's because of the physics. What? Well, no. What happens is this. Like once the human body gives up the air, they like, it's like whenever you. What do you mean? There's already is a war. There's nothing to fear though, because it would never escalate to nuclear war. Because if it does, there's no point. Every fucking country might as well just nuke everywhere. Because nukes constitute to being a nation basically at this point. Literally, if a nation or like a country has a nuke, they're a nation forever. There's nothing that disputes that. But what was I gonna say? I don't think there is. There's no motivation to do that, at least at this point. But what was I gonna say? When it comes to like ships, you're kind of right. But like the people on the deck and sinking ship, they can only stay afloat for a certain amount of time because the moment they stop breathing, or rather not stop breathing, the moment they stop holding their breath, they're gonna sink down because the currents are that strong. Because the ocean isn't like, oh, all the ocean waves are going this way. Instead, what happens is with different heat and temperatures, the ocean waves are like this. They actually drag you down, and then depending on what happens, you go down in the sea, or you just stay up there floating in that little patch of current. There leaves there. Yeah, no, but like the ocean, most of the time, what happens is like ocean currents just drag them down, no matter what, because by that point, the ocean currents are strong enough to do that. No matter how much breath or air you have, or healing, whatever fucking thing you want to wear to like float. That's a if you're like doing like research in the sea, you gotta be very careful, and they wear suits, or they wear like the swimsuits and stuff with like oxygen because it kind of helps them breathe, and not only that, stay afloat. And why a lot of scientists also like ask or asking like for some means and stuff like that to like do research.
With all souls aboard
But
exhibiting.
what was gonna say? Basically, you sink with the ship, and you're gonna wind up miles and miles away, or even like um just detached apart from the ship. And when you're dragged off and you die in the sea, your shoes actually have a high chance of getting like dislodged, and with that, taking a portion of your foot with it because of different scavengers just eating away at your body and stuff, which is a very 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 what's it called? Dark fact. There's a better word, bros. Is that the word? Fine, no, 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 no. There's a better word, but yeah, dark fact.
Signs which suggested they had been scared to death.
We've been talking about this because it's a scary stream and it's very interesting stuff. Why not? Yeah.
Another such story was recounted during our Enemy
Can't
Unknown
wait for the cursed
episode,
paintings.
relating to the
I remember
mysterious
watching a
loss
video,
of an
and
American
one of the
B-52
cursed
and
paintings
her
is
crew.
fucking awesome. Okay, hold on, I want to explain it. There's this cursed painting that has a child and a door, and they say that the child and the door opens, or like the child ends up in like a different area in the painting, and everybody sees like a different version of this when it comes to this painting, and that's why they don't display it, because if you do something bad to the painting, you end up dying like a week later. Or
Crew
something.
at the height of the Vietnam War. On that occasion,
Hopefully they mention
a
it.
US Special Forces team was dispatched to a remote area of the conflict, following the discovery of the aircraft, which had apparently been brought down there.
This is a different video, right?
When they arrived, they found the entire crew dead, having been dispatched in a brutal and unknown fashion.
Okay.
More perplexing was the fact that the gigantic plane was sitting perfectly upright, in between the tightly packed trees of a forest, with no explanation as to how it came to rest there. There was no damage to its fuselage or landing gear, or any of the trees which were still standing around it.
Interesting.
It was as though the huge plane had been vertically lowered to the ground by an unknown force.
Aliens! This is where the aliens come in.
During our retelling of this mystery, we went on to draw parallels with a similar report alleged to have taken place in Russia during the Cold War, in which a transport plane had been located in mysterious circumstances.
So is this?
We had nothing much to go on with regards to the
Nice chat.
details.
I'm gonna go to bed.
But
Well,
in the
good night.
aftermath of that episode, we were later contacted by a subscriber from Russia
Oh,
who stated that they had heard about the incident in question when they were younger.
gosh.
They explained that it's a popular story amongst members of their armed forces, having been passed down between those who served in the Siberian region and their wider families. We have since received emails from another subscriber who now resides in the United States, but whose family was originally from Russia, confirming the details of the tale. It's a mystery which remains unanswered to this day,
Interesting.
having played out in one of the most remote and inhospitable corners of the Soviet Union. The story goes that during the summer of 1961, a paratroop officer based at Valak Airfield was unexpectedly
like I said, I'm
summoned
just being
to see
quiet
the
because
base
I don't know
commander.
what the details are.
He was given orders to select a team of his men, who would then be flown out to a far-flung region of the Siberian landscape
How to
on a
relate it to
search
like
and
some other
rescue
thing.
mission. Whilst en route to the location,
Look how old the
as he had
plane
briefed
looks, too.
his squad, the young officer
I
had
would
been perplexed
definitely
at
get,
how
like,
any
jet lag.
aircraft could have ended up in such an isolated area, well away from established flight
Boost
paths.
thrust.
Several hours later, he and his team had been deposited on open ground, adjacent to an area of dense woodland, their pilots informing them that this was as close to their destination as they could safely land. It would take a further hour of meandering between varying densities of sprawling pines and spruces before they would finally reach their objective. There had been no small degree of commotion as the lead paratrooper had nearly
No, this
collided
is kind
with
of
the metal
dry. This is kind of
fuselage,
dry.
which seemed to have materialized out of nowhere. As his men instinctively formed a perimeter around the small transport aircraft, the lieutenant was far from oblivious to the quizzical expressions they were now exhibiting. The plane before them was an Antonov A2, a small prop-driven transport which was capable of carrying up to 12 passengers. It was painted in military colours and was sat upright on the forest floor, perfectly intact as though patiently waiting to commence the return journey back to its base.
Like, obviously unable to.
There were no
use
signs of
extrusion.
impact damage to its fixed landing gear or propeller, with the trees and ground around it perfectly undisturbed, seeming to negate the possibility of a crash landing. Motioning for one of the NCOs to join him,
Interesting. So this
the
is
lieutenant
very.
moved tentatively
odd.
towards the plane, struggling to come to terms
You
with
have to
what
be
they
like a
had
perfect landing
discovered.
to land that in between like trees.
At both the front and rear of the Antonov,
Even
there
then, it
were
would
dense
like
bushes and thick
would
tree
have to crush
trunks,
something.
obstacles which precluded the possibility of it landing where it was now sitting, or of it being taxied into the forest.
Yeah, just that too.
Ducking under the wings and trying the external door, the pair discovered that it was locked. With the help of two other men, it would take several minutes for them to successfully force entry. Cautiously filtering into the main cabin,
Oh, it's like all the
they
crew's just gonna
found there was
disappear.
nobody aboard,
Okay.
and no signs that anything untoward had taken place. In the cockpit, the controls were set as if the plane was still in flight, as opposed to preparing to land. It was also discovered that none of the plane's electrical systems were working.
Okay.
The safety harnesses for both pilots were still securely
It was
fastened,
probably that the crew
despite
just
the
left.
fact that their
Honestly,
seats were now empty, and there was a half-full cup of coffee perched
something
in one
happened
corner of the
with
cockpit.
why they put the plane there.
Lying at the base of most of the seats in the main cabin were weapons, packs, and webbing, identical in nature to the ones that he and his fellow paratroopers were wearing.
It doesn't make sense why they would just left
Conscious
it, though.
that the longer they remained there, the more his men would be affected by the mysterious and haunting nature of their discovery, the officer had ordered that all logbooks and papers be recovered. He then took several photographs of both the interior and exterior of the plane, before ordering his men to form up and commence
we
the
see
long
these?
walk back to their transport. Upon their return to Valak Airfield, Once his report had been handed in, the lieutenant was ordered not to discuss the mission with anyone else, and to ensure that his men were given the same orders.
Yeah, so
But
it's
given
probably
the
like a
nature of
secret
military
mission by like
culture,
the Russian government.
The story would inevitably find its way out into the wider Soviet forces, prompting difficult questions, for which there were no easy answers. It is rumoured that during their return flight back to base, the paratroopers took the liberty of reading the papers they had recovered from the Antonov prior to handing them in to their superiors. The copy of the flight manifest recovered from the cockpit revealed that the transport had set off from Vorkuta Sovietsky Air Base several months prior for a short run into a neighbouring airfield. Upon reading this, the soldiers had become increasingly unnerved.
Why did they land there?
The base in question was used for the deployment of tactical bombers, situated just outside the city of Vorkuta. And yet, the missing transport plane had been found over 12,000 kilometers from both its takeoff point and official destination. Not only was this well outside of its maximum operating range, meaning that it would not be able to survive any return journey due to a lack of fuel, but it was also situated nowhere near any other Soviet military facility. In simple terms, the plane should not have been able to get as far as it had, and would have stood no hope of being able to land anywhere safely.
I don't know how to explain that.
In
That's
addition
just
to
weird.
this, the document made no reference to the flight having contained any passengers, raising awkward questions as to why equipment and weaponry typical of a paratrooper detachment had been found aboard it. The manner in which the
was like a
Antonov had been
cover-up for
discovered
something.
also made little
situation.
sense, resting perfectly intact on the ground, as if it had descended vertically from the sky above. There was no sign that there had been any disturbance or struggle aboard it, with safety belts engaged and equipment resting close to hand in readiness if it was required. It almost seemed to the rescue team as if some mysterious force had somehow removed the crew and passengers from the aircraft in mid-flight, before gently lowering it to the ground.
Whoa,
In the
right?
decades that followed,
No,
members
like,
of the team would make a number
you would
of
basically
discreet
have to, like,
inquiries into the
hold
matter,
that, and then have some
usually
sort
when
of
they
like
encountered
mechanism to
other
like
soldiers who had
gently
served
place
at
it
the
down if it
Vorkuta
didn't
Air
disturb any
Base.
trees or anything like that.
But such discussions would only ever elicit
I
two
don't know.
forms of reply: that the servicemen they were talking to had no knowledge of the matter, or they were politely informed that they were asking dangerous questions. As a result, only whispers of what transpired were heard outside of Russia. In the years since, the story has been disseminated to small Russian communities outside of the military, and a number of theories have been put forward as to what might have transpired. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the one seized upon by those who have chosen to discuss the matter in a public forum is that the crew was subject to an alien abduction.
Oh my god, of course. Yep, there we go.
Supporters of this theory speculate that the
Oh
Antonov
my
was
gosh.
taken under extraterrestrial control,
Mhm.
the plane's crew and passengers being removed mid-flight, before it was then deposited in a far-off location by their
That just doesn't make
abductors.
sense at all.
It is argued that this is why the missing men had not had time to remove their safety harnesses, apparently disappearing from inside a locked and secure
Because
cabin.
like, how is that even possible? Like, they just
It also
disappear and
might
appear into
explain
the
how
ship.
the
Like,
incident had
that doesn't
clearly
make
occurred
sense.
whilst the aircraft was in mid-flight,
has like no
but was then
basis
safely lowered to
for,
the
like,
ground amidst a packed
actually
forest,
occurring, right?
sustaining no apparent damage.
Uh-huh.
Reports of incidents in which vehicles and their crews appear to have suffered a rapid and inexplicable misfortune are to be found elsewhere
I
across
feel like
the
it had to be like a
globe.
Russian government sort of thing. Like, it was like
In
a test.
1917,
People that came across
the
it.
three-masted schooner Zabrina was discovered adrift off the coast of France. Her hull was still packed full of the valuable coal she had been tasked to deliver, but there wasn't a soul aboard. The galley table had been laid out ready for breakfast, and the ship's logbook and papers were lying open on the captain's desk. But of her 23-man crew, There was no sign.
You're probably gonna sell like the airplane.
In October of 1955, a merchant vessel named the MV Joyita was found in the South Pacific, with all 25 of her crew and passengers missing, despite the ship's caulk reinforcement rendering her unsinkable.
Does it remind me of a ship that was no what the story is from? There's definitely like a historical ship that was sold around in like Latin America over and over and over again.
Other
So that maybe could have
commentators have
happened with
shied
like airplanes and stuff like that. But what was I gonna say? Then there's the other story where like a ship that originated in Australia, I think. Hold on. It is. Is it Barely Sociable that did it? I forget who it was.
Today's video is brought to you by Blinkist. Now, one question I often get asked close to shore, and the weapon was still carrying a large amount of conventional explosives, as well as an undisclosed amount 50 miles south of La Palma. The next day, a broadcast had been sent to what happened.
This is from like the one in Puerto
Directions
Rico.
regarding of Larry Hillbloom, a man that had some very facial reconstructive surgery, where he was noted to look. The guy being on that plane that day comes from his live-in girlfriend, who is actually dead, and
I forget. Well, the point is, it's similar to that.
Away from the idea of extraterrestrial involvement, citing the secretive and unaccountable attitude of the Soviet military towards weapons development. They believe this incident may be yet another example of Soviet armed forces conducting illicit experiments, with
Yeah,
little
maybe.
regard for the
I
safety
don't know,
of the
but there's
soldiers
nothing linking
involved
it
in
up to
such
anything
projects.
specific. Could just be like a mission.
There is
they
strong
set up.
evidence that outside of the official narrative regarding the Soviet space program, numerous cosmonauts were successfully launched into orbit, only to die during their mission, their bodies still drifting lifelessly through space.
Oh god, that sounds horrible.
The secrecy surrounding the incidents which would take place at Dyatlov Pass have also been attributed to military experiments, as well as more disturbing stories such as the infamous Soviet sleep experiment.
That one's
Despite
a
the latter
creepypasta,
being
if I
widely
remember.
cited as
Yeah.
a creepypasta, it is not beyond all possibility that there is a kernel of truth to it.
I don't know.
Is it possible that the Antonov may have been carrying a technology which resulted in the loss of its occupants, or that it was subject to some form of portal or projected field,
I like the
which
question mark.
resulted in the disappearance of
Did
its
you
crew?
notice how the question marks look?
There is, of course, a far more rational explanation for what took place, and this is that the incident is merely the military equivalent of an urban legend.
That's what I'm going with.
It may well be that a search and rescue team was indeed dispatched to Mount Carmel, and did locate a downed aircraft there, one which had no valid reason to be where it was found, with the crew no longer present. The AN-2 remains one of Russia's most mass-produced aircraft, largely due to the impressive technical capabilities it possessed for its time. It had no apparent stall speed, meaning that in some
Yeah.
circumstances, the pilot may have been able to idle and glide much further than its operational range. It
Ooh,
was
that's
also capable
cool.
of taking off and landing over very short distances.
Yeah, because that means it
meaning
wouldn't
that a
like
talented operator could well have
it's
crash
just-
landed it in woods,
like that.
resulting in
Obviously
minimal
not that like
damage.
exaggerated of a curve down.
Stranded in the middle of nowhere, and with little hope of rescue, it isn't unreasonable to imagine that the plane's occupants might have set off into the Siberian tundra, perhaps never to be seen again.
Yeah, but again, I don't know why they didn't take
Elements
their
of the
backpacks.
story, such as the plane being impossibly sandwiched between trees,
Huh?
the crew's safety
That could
harnesses
be like an
being
urban legend.
engaged, and the controls being rigged for
Yeah.
flight rather than landing, may well have been embellishments
Mm-hmm.
added over the years in order to add more intrigue.
Yeah,
With the passage of time, details of the more clandestine events during the Cold War continue to slowly filter into the public domain. It is hoped that one day, answers to questions such as the fate of the Isdal woman and the death of Commander Lionel Crabb may yet become clear. And along with them, the truth surrounding the loss of an Antonov
that's like another
transport
story or
plane
something.
amidst the wild and untamed Siberian landscape.
Yep. No. Where is it? I'm gonna put on a song. Music. This one. And then I'll come back right now because I need to eat something. I'm gonna make myself a sandwich. songs by Vetron. Rather, he didn't make it. Obviously, it's a remix. That is that. On to the 27 minutes of real life on Nightmarish horror stories because we're done with the story
From
section.
tragic events,
today.
hauntings,
Oh,
vampires, and murders. In this video,
Oh, cool
we'll look
video.
at another collection of 20 stories, videos, and photos that will most certainly chill you to the core. Remember, if you'd like us to go more in depth on any of these 20 topics, then let us know in the comments section below.
Mhm.
Now, before we begin, we'd like to say a special thank you to this video's sponsor, Magellan TV. You've probably already heard us rave about our exclusive partnership with Magellan TV.
It's like, oh,
While this
shrimp
week,
bread is
we'd like
so
to
good.
personally recommend a show to watch.
But the ham
We want to
not
highlight
bad.
the documentary series, Predict My Future, The Science of Us. It's a 4-part television show that takes you into the worlds of biology and psychology to explain how experiences of our youth inform the health of our elders. It busts popular myths
Yeah.
regarding aging, nutrition, and mental well-being.
Health?
That's one of our favorite aspects of this docuseries.
Biology and
How it
psychology
brings in experts of the fields
health
and professionals across
are
industries
important.
to refute conspiracy, yet enlighten us with
Are very
fascinating
intertwined.
information. It's the perfect mix of education and the unbelievable.
Even if
Exactly
we're
how we curate
idea
some
of
of our own
psychology is
videos and
kind
top
of
fives.
primitive in
Predict
certain
My
areas,
Future, The Science of Us, is also a new release.
not
Part
so
of
well
Magellan
understood in
TV's 15 to 20
other
hours of brand new
circumstances.
content they will add to their library each week, always leaving fans
the
of true
psychology is
crime
barely like
and other relevant topics
growing.
with something fresh to binge and enjoy.
Psychologists were philosophers, Plato and Aristotle. Really? It's like, was Plato a mathematician? A maker of mathematicians. You're gonna attribute like anything to those two, I swear to
So
God.
stop waiting, use the link in the description to access a free month trial, and jump into the jaw-dropping science of Predict My Future and other top-notch series. You'll be sure to find your next great escape. Now, if you haven't already done so,
Oh,
hit
yeah,
those
there's that.
likes, sit back, and enjoy. The
What was
disappearance
that?
of Ben McDaniel. 30-year-old Ben often went diving alone at the cave in Vortex Spring, Florida. In August 2010, he vanished. Specialist recovery divers thoroughly searched the cave, but they found no evidence of Ben. No
I don't
body,
think
no
he just
marks on the
vanished. I
cave
think
walls,
somebody.
no activity by
did some-
aquatic scavengers, or any other evidence. There were many theories as to what happened, as Ben had had some recent setbacks in his life. He had most recently lost his younger brother.
Oh.
Was it possible that he committed suicide and squeezed himself into an inaccessible part of the cave so
No,
his
I
body
don't
wouldn't
think
be
so.
found? A private investigator who was hired by the family thought that Ben was killed on land
Yeah, I
and that the
think
diving
that may have
accident had been used to
What-
cover up a crime. Especially after the owner of Vortex Spring also died in mysterious circumstances.
Okay, like I know this is very nasty. When you die underwater, whenever it gets hot enough for the temperature, or whenever the water's temperature gets hot enough, bodies start to rise up. So, if he hasn't been found thus far, chances are he died somewhere else and his body was trapped. Like, or rather, he didn't die somewhere else. He could have died there, right? But that his body was trapped somewhere to be hidden. If he was killed, right?
Arthur's Seat Doll. A group of
What's
boys were
this?
chasing rabbits in Edinburgh in 1836. They found something spooky in a cave on Arthur's Seat. There were 17 little coffins, each containing
What
a
the fuck?
tiny wooden doll, lying
okay.
under 3 slate slabs. The dolls were intricately carved, and each wore a different handmade outfit. Why they were made, and who made them, remains a mystery to this day.
Could be
Perhaps they were
producing-
effigies made by witches, or possible protective charms placed there by sailors, who believed that their wives could bury their image if they were lost at sea.
Sailors? Oh,
Or were
okay,
they
that's
put there to
interesting.
honour the
I've
17
never heard of that one.
victims of the notorious body snatchers Burke and Hare? It seems unlikely, as 12 of their victims were women, and the little dolls are all dressed as men. The dolls are currently on display at the National Museum of Scotland, and their origin is still a mystery.
Oh no no.
Brenda
We're not gonna see the footage.
Baby abduction. It's every parent's worst nightmare, the kidnapping of a child. While this family's nanny of an 11-year-old child faked her own pregnancy by holding a baby shower and wearing a fake belly. Then she got her cousin to sneak into her employee's house in Auckland, New Zealand,
Oh wait, is that
and
actually
take the
footage?
child so that she could pretend it was hers. All of this was captured on CCTV.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what they're playing.
Now watch how
But
the
it
woman
is
sneaks
CCTV.
into the house wearing a balaclava and snatches the baby.
Not
Luckily,
playing that.
police found the culprits, and the baby was returned to her parents after what must have been the most frightening 8 hours of their lives. The nanny was charged with
That's horrible.
kidnapping, criminal harassment, and burglary, and was jailed for 3 years. Face me from the sky. I remember that story. Oh my god. Oh my god. One of my friends in like elementary school, his name was Albert. He was so fucking funny, dude. Oh my god. And very dark too. He said that like cows or something rained from the sky and people would just like eat the meat and it was like poisoned or something. I don't know. Something like that. He said he got The Angel of
a
Death.
story.
Beverly
Well,
Allett. Beverly Allett, or the Angel of Death as she became known, is one of Britain's most notorious female serial killers.
But yeah,
The crimes
in the
were all the more
comments they mentioned
shocking,
that, right?
as she was a nurse and befriended the parents
But like,
of her
I
victims
swear in the comments, it's just like there's like a
before and after
body in
she took
here.
their young lives.
And I'm just like, what the fuck? So when anything comes up,
From an
I'm just
early
gonna.
age, Allett, who was
block it
born
out.
in Grantham, England, showed signs of an attention disorder that included wearing dressings and casts over imaginary wounds. She also spent a considerable amount of time in hospital seeking medical attention for a string of false physical ailments. As an adult, she struggled with her weight and became increasingly attention-seeking. She was also known to self-harm and was later diagnosed with the attention disorder Munchausen syndrome by proxy. However, despite her obvious problems, she went on to train as a nurse and secured a temporary 6-month contract at the Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in 1991, where she began work on Children's Ward 4. The hospital was chronically understaffed, so Allett was often left alone with the young patients. Not long after she started working at the hospital, 7-month-old Liam Taylor, who was admitted with a respiratory disorder, unexpectedly suffered cardiac arrest and died.
Oh, that's so sad.
2 weeks later, 11-year-old Timothy Hardwick also died, followed by 2-month-old twin Becky Phillips. None of these children had been admitted with life-threatening ailments.
Yeah. See, when
In
stuff like
between
that
these
starts
deaths,
happening,
several other babies
you
and
know,
young
it's something
children
with like the
had
doctors
unexpected
or like a
life-threatening
nurse.
medical episodes.
How they're not taking
The
care
one
of like
thing all
their
these patients
clients.
had in common
Face
was that
each other,
nurse
like,
Beverly
avoiding
Allett
sick clients.
was in attendance, although initially no suspicion fell on her. However, her atrocious crimes were brought to an end with the death of 15-month-old Claire Peck, when tests revealed a high level of potassium in the baby's blood, as well as traces of
That's not
lignocaine.
good.
Police were called to investigate, and the other suspicious cases were also looked into, and they found that inordinately high doses of insulin were found in most. In total, 13 victims were identified, 4 of whom were dead. The only common factor was the presence of Beverly Allett at every episode. In May 1993, Allett was found guilty of murdering 4 children, attempting
Oh my
to
God,
murder
that's
3
horrible.
others, and causing grievous bodily harm to a further 6. She received 13 life sentences for her crimes, and is currently detained at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire, with little chance of ever being released.
That's god.
The-
What is it? What is it?
were found in most.
Like, I obviously don't want to have like Nazi fucking shit on my stream. Let's just stop.
The look of hatred.
Yeah, it's like,
Joseph Goebbels was the Nazi propaganda minister.
I'm not gonna go back into the
He was
video.
one
and
of
erase
Adolf
it, right?
Hitler's closest
I
and
just
most
don't wanna,
devoted
like,
followers,
Password.
and in a good mood at the League of Nations meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, in 1933. Life magazine photographer Alfred Eigelstedt was able to capture him relaxed and smiling at one point. But then Goebbels realized that the photographer was in fact a German-born Jew. His whole demeanor changed, his posture became stiff, and there was a palpable expression of hate on his face. The day after Hitler shot himself in 1945, Goebbels had his 6 children injected with morphine
Oh
and
my
then
god.
poisoned with cyanide capsules before he and his wife committed suicide. Years later, Albert spoke out about the photograph and how Goebbels looked up at him with an expression full of hate.
Jesus. I'm pretty sure he had like a wife and 4 children, right? Or 6 children? And what was I gonna say? Basically, he was like I think the guy that like helped Hitler out like a lot. I don't remember.
BTK Strangler. For 30 years, Boy Scout troop leader and Church Council president Dennis Rader fooled the world and his family into believing he was a respectable working man. But in reality, he had harbored vicious, murderous, sadistic thoughts since he was a teenager, and between 1974 and 1991, he killed and tortured 10 people in and around Wichita, Kansas.